Welcome back, everyone, to the Quake Pro League. Still got 2 matches left to go. Will be Base versus Av3k to start off with, and then it'll be Sarnath versus Rafa as the final series of the evening. Normally, we bring on Wheat, but this time around he's not here this week, but we'll be back next week. So we're going to carry on with these next 2 matches, starting off with Base versus Av3k here, Flea.
This is going to be an interesting matchup, if only for the major clash of styles. On the one hand, you've got Base, widely considered to be one of, if not the single greatest defensive powerhouse in Europe right now. The man is a defensive god. And on the other hand, of course, you've got Av3k, a man who coined the term Av3k aggression, or rather had the term coined after his behavior in-game. The man is just go, go, go. Now, he has slowed that down a bit and adopted a more strategic playstyle over the years, but still, this man can absolutely bring it in terms of tempo, damage, and aggression.
Something we'll do indeed. We know what Av3k's all about here. He's had a good start so far. Even in the last series, like you rightly said, did take down Razy. So that's a huge amount of momentum coming his way going into these future matchups. But against Base, it's going to be very, very difficult to try and force his style onto Base. Like I said, most people normally think, okay, he's got quite a defensive approach against a lot of his opponents, which he does, don't get me wrong. Very counter-aggressive, only, likes to take a lot of his engagements in terms of that percentile advantage. We see it time and time again. It just shows that Base just have a lot of patience and discipline in a lot of these matchups here. So it depends on who can force each other's style on the most. You've got the aggression from Av3k and, of course, the defensive counter-reactive style from Base. It's going to be a very interesting matchup. But when we see the maps, I'm very curious to see which opponent will select what, because both these players love Veil. We know what Av3k likes in terms of Molten. Oh, there we go. We've got it straight up. And I love it as well. Straight away, Av3k has actually banned Veil. Don't get me wrong. Av3k's actually quite good on Veil. Maybe he's not too comfortable playing it against Base, though, because every time Base gets the lead, he's almost unstoppable on that map, and it's very hard to, at least come back from that at all. And Base has decided to ban Corrupted Keep. Av3k doesn't really play much Corrupted Keep, so I kind of feel like for Base, he's just not too comfortable on that map anyway. But it will be starting off with Ruins, going on to Exile, and Av3k's going to be pretty pleased with the fact that we are going to be finishing off with Molten Falls.
Now, last time they played, it was Av3k who won 2-1. Interesting to see that Awoken and Deep Embrace, 2 of the maps that were played last time, have both been removed from the pool, so we're getting a very different series this time around. Starting off on Ruins, Av3k is going for the mobility with the Strock versus Base. We know that Base loves to play Ice, and he has that tool available to him to throw down the turret just before fights, give his opponent an extra thing to worry about, and also just strategically leave it around the map to get information. Then map 2, Exile. Sorlag is a champion we've seen picked on Exile a fair bit, Ranger as well, so these are pretty standard matchups here as well. Sorlag, of course, has got the speed and that maneuverability around the map, but then Ranger, the burst damage with the orb, as well as that instant relocation to steal away a mega or something, can really help. And then on the final map, Molten Falls, Nyx comes out to play. Nyx is a champion that we usually see mainly on Molten and Awoken, I feel like, these days, so pretty standard pick once more. And then Av3k is going to taking perhaps a bit more of a laid-back approach, because Galena tends to be a more defensive champion.
And you've noticed Base as well banning that slash leading into Molten Falls. I'm kind of a little bit curious as to why Base is banned Awoken instead of Molten Falls, because I kind of feel like Av3k excels at that map. It's not just CNZ or Cypher, but Av3k's also very, very good at Molten Falls. But it's decided to go for it instead. We know about his defensive approach on Molten Falls, likes to hide in between bottom and top mid just to find out exactly what Av3k could be up to. But again, it needs to be very, very cautious. But you're right though, with the Eisen, we see Base play the Eisen quite a lot on Ruins. Mainly part of the meta here, especially trying to contest that heavy as well with that early preparation. Exile should be an interesting one, especially with the Sorlag on the side of Base. But Molten Falls, yeah, we don't see any scale, anything like that at all. None of those shenanigans. We've seen a lot of scale here today on Molten Falls, but it will be the Galena versus the Nyx. So interesting way to finish things off in this series.
Indeed, I also think that Molten Falls is the one that stands out the most. Other than that, it's all pretty standard across the board. Now, it does seem like both of the players are ready to go, so we are going to get this game ready for you in just a moment. We've got Base, we've got Av3k for our first featured matchup, and both of these players have had a really solid track record so far. Av3k, I believe, was number 2 EU in the previous stage. Now, this time around, he's still doing extremely well, beating Razy just earlier last week, like you mentioned yourself. And then on the other hand, you've got Base. Base is a player who was undefeated until last week when he finally did lose a series against his opponent, Wenger. So both of these players are in the top of the EU region. I think Base is ranked number 4 right now, Av3k number 3. So this should be a high octane, high skill, and a very intense series.
Should be an absolute banger indeed. Very curious to see who's going to force what style on whom, when and how, and why going into this first map as well. It's going to be a bit of a doozy here, Flea, but we'll see how Base can do against Av3k, because like I said, Av3k's only just recently defeated Razy 2-1, so it's going to be full of morale, momentum coming into this matchup. In terms of mentality, he's going to be feeling pretty good about himself to try and take down Base. Only very, very few players, especially in the EU region, have been able to force their style onto Base, and it's very, very difficult for anyone to try and force their style onto him. Let's see what's going to happen. It's going to be the first map in this series between Base and Av3k. We are going to be kicking off from Base's POV.
Looks like the chat predictions are basically equal right now. Slight edge to Av3k as it currently stands, but it's more or less tied 50-50. Now we immediately get a solid burst of aggression. Av3k using that peeker to keep his opponent at bay. And there's already more than 10 seconds between the items, so that gives either one of these players the opportunity to establish control early on. It looks like it will be Base securing heavy, but he pays a heavy price for it. He was caught completely looking in the wrong direction, and Av3k got a fair bit of free damage off right there. So even though it is Base who has secured both of the major items already, Av3k is really not in bad shape.
At least Base responded with that 63 damage from the first rocket as Av3k was going for that drive-by. Still though, what I like from Base as well earlier on, that early preparation with the turret onto that heavy contestant. They just continue to keep the high ground though. Mega is coming in the next couple of seconds using that turret to give him a helping hand. We'll be backing away after picking up that Mega. Hasn't really picked up any lights as of yet. As the heavies come up in the next 12 seconds, that means Base does have time to pick up the light. But look at this, Av3k is all over him. He knows exactly what shenanigans Base is going to be up to. Does manage to drop down. Doesn't have the turret this time round to help him out, but it doesn't matter as Av3k will not be dropping down for him. Doesn't really... Well, I suppose he could have had the stack, but just don't want to take the risk because he wants to hold the high ground to pick up this Mega. He has a good first round there, trying to use those rockets to try and do some extra damage for Base, but he won't be able to as it's already been a couple minutes, but no frags as of yet.
Base so far has been the one dealing most of the damage. But it is Av3k who now secured Mega. Is he going to go all in? Nope. I think he's just going to maybe go for a sneaky drop down. Doesn't even want to do that. So this is a very, very reserved and patient playstyle that we're seeing Av3k take. Really not just aggressively dropping in. That's a nice rocket though, if you can get a good amount of damage with the peeker as well. You could tell. Av3k right there, he was contemplating going in for a push. Oh, this is not looking good. That turret did everything that it needed to do. I think it did around 30 points of damage only, but it distracted Av3k long enough that Base cleaned him out very quickly.
Certainly did indeed. Base picking up another heavy. 3 minutes has passed. Base with the early lead. Not something you want to give Base if, no matter who you are here, as Av3k's just in that courtyard. Lucky for him though, he won't get caught, but will he get cleaned up though? Av3k trying to do his best to back away. It's actually done a huge chunk of damage, especially with that Pico as well. Now Av3k just standing his ground, just trying to see if Base will drop down for him. As Base is now run out of rocket ammo, just gonna decide to prep early once again for that heavy. Using that turret As backup, hasn't got the rocket still. He's just realised that, and look at that, the rocket ammo was directly in front of him. I think he had the rockets out to push in with the rocket ammo and then use it straight afterwards. But it's all going wrong here, Flea, as Av3k does tie things up after that mistake from base.
And all of that started with that brilliant peeker play that we saw Av3k pull off right there. He dropped down when base was still just trying to LG down, and he wasn't able to switch weapons on time, and so he just had the little robot in his face. Before he could switch to rail, he already took so much damage, and that allowed Av3k to turn a really bad situation around and helped him out massively. Now that is one good rocket to land at the end. Unfortunately for base, it was after, or rather before, the Mega was picked up, meaning that Av3k isn't as struggling as much as he otherwise would have been. And now base is the one who is gatekeeping access to the heavy. Av3k is one frag ahead, but he did have to give up, rather, control of key parts of the map to make it happen.
Base has been gatekeeping the majority of these heavies, especially with that turret, but that last rail from Av3k there. Doing his duty there, almost at the halfway stage. Av3k coming up 3-1. Gonna try and contest this heavy. Looks like base isn't going to be approaching it at all. I think Av3k's a little bit surprised as well. Just trying to see exactly where base could be at this moment. We push it on forward to try and contest this Mega next as well, just due to the fact that the segregation of timings is working in Av3k's favour. He did hear that turret though, as now he's going through the telly, and he does get that first rail off.
They just more or less passed each other perfectly. Av3k shot out of the teleport just as base walked by, and they both just kept going as if nothing happened. Now base dropping down, he's looking for a way back in. He was hoping that Av3k wasn't that close yet. Would have liked to land the rail and then just push in to secure the heavy, but unfortunately for him, Av3k was already really close, right on his case. And now he's struggling. He's not landing the rails that he should. And Av3k, yeah, beautiful maneuvers right there. Av3k knows that there's nothing that base can do to do damage up him, or up there to him rather. And he exploits that perfectly to get himself 3 points in the lead. That's a lot of turret damage. I think that was around 70 turret damage.
Yeah,
the turret's helping a lot.
It really was. I just don't think he expected the turret to be positioned there above the heavy jump pad. He was like, oh, okay, turret's there. And he's like, oh, wait, hold on. Base is in the courtyard, so that's going to be pretty much it. There's now base trying to do what he can with the rockets, but probably not the weapon he should be having in his hand. Yes, now it's the perfect time, but it's already way too late. Called him once again. 5-2 now in favour of Av3k. We'll be picking up that Mega. Heavy's up in the next 5 seconds. Av3k's definitely going to go for this, knowing that base is just sitting there waiting on the rail spawn to make that push. And if these things are starting to spiral out of control once again. Still 3.5 minutes left remaining. Av3k trying to find out exactly where it could be, but base just sitting there on that TP, waiting for him to get that point blank. Did get a couple there. Great stuff from base to respond with that shotgun, and considering the stack Av3k had, I don't think Av3k expected him just to be standing in front of that telly. So look at what he can. Oh, I was going to say he's going to go for that light, but Av3k's already done too much damage before he picked up that light. And Av3k's picked up the Mega as well. Heavy is just being picked up as well. He's just realised that base has dropped down for the heavy. As done as he can towards that turret. It's got the LG going towards him in the courtyard. Will you be able to clean him up? It's very similar in terms of stack. That rail is definitely going to do itself justice as he extends his lead.
Now things are very tricky for base. I feel like part of the reason why he's been so aggressive on these pushes is because he knows that he is outclassed when it comes to mobility. Strok is so much faster than Aizen, both in a straight line essentially, as well as around the corners by using those crouch slides, that base knows that he's got limited opportunities to take down Av3k, and that when he does catch him, he kind of just goes for it, even when the situation doesn't yet call for such aggression. And in doing so, base has already dropped 2 bad frags. And things are now looking a little bit dire. If he has to chase down Av3k 3 times in just 2 minutes, when your opponent can essentially just run circles around you. Oh no, he's even forced to give up the heavy. I don't know about this one. Base, he needs to make magic happen.
He's certainly does. You know, you talk about the mobility of Av3k, considering he's got the 3 frag leads. And Av3k is actually trying to extend his lead, if anything, and why not at the moment? He's doing a great job so far. 1.5 minutes left remaining. Base needs to find 4 frags if he can, but at this point, you see Base trying to regain all the weapons in his arsenal, dropping down towards the heavy as it is up at the moment, as Av3k's going to be going towards the courtyard to pick up that light to restack the best he can. Oh, that was a fantastic rail there from Base. Tried to go 2 for 2, but sadly couldn't catch him as Av3k, like you rightly said, Flea, trying to get away with that mobility. Looks like he's able to here, make it up in the next 5 seconds, but thanks to that turret, Base is going to know exactly where he is. We'll be chasing after him. Needs to find 3 frags in this next 50 seconds.
Railgun is going to be instrumental to Base if he wants to have as much as a shot at this. He needs that instant hit scan damage, no matter how fast his opponent might be moving. But I think that Av3k is playing too smart of a game to let that happen. He's not putting himself out in the open where he's exposed to those rail shots, but instead is trying to always keep some kind of barrier between him and his opponent. Now Base's game sense is really strong, which is what enabled him to find his opponent there. But that peeker, you've always got to keep it in the back of your head, Lethal, even if you catch your opponent off spawn like Base just did. And Av3k has nothing to work with, nothing to defend himself with. He still has that ability. And Base just wasn't quite prepared for that. And it looks like it will cost him map 1. Now, of course, even if he had got the frag, it still would have been very difficult to string another one into it. But nevertheless, Av3k will be the one to secure map 1.
Look at the damage difference as well. 22 damage between the two players. Item control 17 for Av3k and 19 for Base. I must say though, even though Base lost that, he made some great uses of the turret. Not just, you know, contesting the heavy, but the fact that it caught Av3k off guard on top of the heavy jump pad. And of course, you saw on the staircase leading up to the nail gun, just leaving it there in case he does jump over the jump pad from the LD or coming through the telly. I just thought it was great stuff there from Base, just getting its full value from that turret, but still it just was not enough, as the aggression from Av3k was just again too much as well. But nevertheless, Av3k made a great way just to make sure he can secure that victory, trying to extend his lead to the best of his ability, and he absolutely did as well. And Base now has got to find out what he's going to do in map number 2.
Map number 2 might be a different story altogether. This is going to be Exile, one of the most tricky and treacherous maps in the pool. Now, I do want to take a quick look. Indeed, really close in terms of damage. Items are also pretty much comparable, so this was a very balanced game, both in score as well as in control. I think in the end it was really that mobility and the peeker that helped Av3k come out on top. But now, map 2, Exile, completely different. We are getting Base on the Sorlag, a staple on this map, it feels like. Whereas on the other hand, his opponent is going to be playing Ranger. So this, I think, has the potential to be, again, a very explosive matchup.
We saw it earlier between Sib and Chain, and just Chain showing Rye some of these angles he's holding with the rails is just phenomenal to say the least. And it depends how this is going to pan out, really. There's going to be a lot more aggression from what we've seen before. Base almost made that comeback in the last map. It's a little bit of a shame, really. But in terms of the champion picks, you know, Sorlag can be a real pain in the backside to deal with, especially on Exile, especially when it comes to contesting some of these items. But we'll see if they can claw it their way back. But Av3k looking very good so far, trying to force his style as much as he can, and he's doing a great job of it.
Indeed, he is. Av3k convincing first showing on this opening map. Now, I think both players have just about read it up, so it won't be long before we get into the second one. I am curious how the stack advantage that Av3k has to work with, or rather that Base has to work with, is going to play into this one, right? Is Av3k already going to have a different strategy in mind? Is he going to approach certain fights in a different way than he usually would? So far, I don't think I've really seen heavy players being hindered all that much because of that nerf that they just recently received in the most recent patch, but let's see how it pans out on this map.
Yeah, we'll have to indeed. I think it's just going to have to be a lot more awareness from Av3k, just especially on the spawn. But let's be honest, when it comes to putting pressure or suffocating your opponent on the spawn, Av3k is one of the best players to do. We see it time and time again. And we've seen a lot of that as well, considering the matches we've seen previously leading up to this moment. So Av3k is going to be well aware of the situation, what he needs to do in order to try and topple base. But of course, he can't let the item control go heavy in base's favor, because that's where things are going to start tumbling downwards, spiral out of control once again. But I can't see Av3k doing that really. He seems to be very, very good in terms of chipping away at your opponent until he's literally bleeding, and then he's going to have to be able to finish him off straight afterwards. So for Av3k, it's going to be quite tough in terms of the champion picks, but with the all placements and how he wants to try and contest these items, we'll have to see what base is going to be up to here. So currently 1-0 in the series for Av3k here, as base is trailing behind ever so slightly, but he really made a good effort in that last map, almost catching up to Av3k. But speaking of Av3k, we could be starting with his POV, already picking up that Mega and the heavy machine gun.
Nice little rocket to kick things off. That is going to keep base's stack in check after picking up that major item, the heavy that he spawned alongside. Now, as is common on this map, neither player is interested in just going all in already. They first want to secure some of the weapons. This is quite a large map, so the weapons are spread out significantly so. But that is a lot of damage. Av3k's long-distance rockets almost feel magnetic so far, but he doesn't have railgun yet. I don't know if base is aware of that.
I'm not too sure if he is either. The only indication he has is the fact that Av3k is currently using the heavy machine gun. That's the only way you can figure that out. He's going straight in with the shotgun. Comes in with the orb as well to try and clean it back up. But will he be able to here? Good LG from base. The shotgun will not do it. And oh, base just manages to scrape that by on 33 HP and also picks up the Mega. So he can re-engage once again. He's realised that Av3k probably has backed away, gone for that heavy. Item segregation, not really a huge amount in it, only a few seconds. With base now looking a lot better compared to before. I like the approach Av3k had with the shotgun, just a couple of missed shots pretty much did him in, but 90 seconds have passed and base with that early lead.
Must be frustrating for Av3k. He did over twice as much damage as base in that opening minute and a half, and then when it finally came down to the fight, he still ended up dropping the frag. Although I don't think it'll keep his mind occupied for too long, since he does immediately tie things up. 1-1. Solid damage. I sometimes do feel like heavy machine gun can be a bit of an underutilized weapon on this map, because of how risky it is to get to railgun.
Just keeping him at bay with these rockets, and now the LG on that staircase. As Av3k does manage to get the lead. Great stack to work with as well. Finds him through the telly. He's going to pretend to use the orb. Actually orbs through in the end. Needs to go for the telly to clean this up. And if base hit that rail, it would have been 2-all. But sadly for base, he did miss his opportune moment to try and tie this up. And once again, Av3k trying to keep him at bay. And that was just beautiful once again from Av3k. Picking up the Mega, and has still got a height advantage over base. He's basically going to try and contest the heavy, but Av3k still manages to bag it. Huge stuff there from Av3k, trying to keep him on the spawn, but already base is way too quick, and he's really done a huge amount again. Base actually went straight through to see if he can get the trade, but he doesn't, as Av3k is absolutely loving life right now. Up 6-1, maybe 7, depending on how that rocket goes. You saw base was thinking about dropping down. Will he be able to clean up? Yes, he does, and that's 7-1 in favor of Av3k.
Base is uncharacteristically aggressive, I feel like.
Yeah.
We've been hyping up as this really strong defensive player, but now he's basically charged at Av3k 5 times in a row, really without much success, and very often he is outgunned when he does it. He just takes his starting machine gun, finds a nail gun, and that's it, he pushes. Even though Av3k has been hitting like a madman when it comes to LG. Av3k right now at 42% LG. Av3k even 100% rail. Now, of course, he's only hit and shot 3 railguns so far, but nevertheless, make that 4, make that 5. Okay, this is starting to get increasingly impressive. And Base is just slamming into this wall time and time again, hoping that it will eventually crack and give him a way in. But Av3k has proved to be absolutely brilliant on the defense. Just look at that. Finally, Base gets the frag, but look at how many frags he had to give up for that to finally work, and he won't even get any sort of consistent control out of it, because he shows up way too early before the heavy, goes down again, and should have given it to Av3k if Av3k hadn't gotten stuck on the corner right there. So, silver lining for the Russian player. Now he should be able to get Mega as well, so this might be the start of some momentum that he needs.
He needs anything at this point. Behind by 8 frags already. Still got 5 minutes to work with. But Av3k's been on an absolute tear leading up to this moment. So we've got 5 minutes left. Base now trying to contest this heavy coming up in the next couple of seconds. Av3k realises that we won't be able to grab it, but at least he can do a little bit of damage before being able to get out of it. Oh, good first rail there from Av3k. Like I said, he's going to keep chipping away at Base until push it on forward. Good orb there just to make sure he can guarantee that mega pickup. Still a fair amount of damage with his rockets here from Base. Av3k's not been able to do much here apart from that last rocket, and Av3k still wins that last engagement even after all that rocket damage he had to take here. And look at that, he was tempted to go for again another rocket kill, but switched out to the LG, but the shotgun is going to do itself justice once more. And now 14-4 for Av3k.
Base has just really not been able to play the game that he wants to play. He wants to get that early lead and then counterpunch. That's what we were saying, right? Base is an incredibly talented counterpuncher. He puts his opponent in a position where they will make a mistake, they will come to him, and he will just mercilessly strike them down over and over again. But for this game, he's really been put in a position where he at least made the decision to apply pressure over and over again. And it's really not been working out for him so far. Now he's got a few kills in a row now. This could be the start of some momentum. But we also know that there's just 3.5 minutes left to go for 9 frags. That's an absolutely breakneck pace that Base is looking at to get those kills. And Av3k, we've seen what he can do on the defense. Again, he is the one coming out on top of this fight. Can Base even get onto the heavy? Can he do anything at all? Yes, he will. With 3 points of health though, Lethal.
Deary me. Still needs to find 8 small frags though. He's got the mobility up to Sorlag, but what else really? Need a bit more than that. So you can see Av3k's not going to let this slip out of his fingers at all in the slightest. Base does have to stack though. Misses that first rail. He's going to go and push in through the telly to see if he can get the flank onto Av3k, but Av3k isn't falling for any nonsense there from Base. He knew exactly what he was up to, but does get behind him eventually in the end, but he's going to be flying downwards from the LG of Base, and Av3k actually won that engagement considering the stack advantage Base had. Trying to trap him once again, but look at it, yeah, I can understand that. Base had to push super aggressively there to keep this as competitive as possible. As the split comes out, good LG again from Base. And again, still there's only 2.5 minutes until this is all over.
I really don't see this happening anymore.
Yeah.
Av3k is just too strong on the defense, and every single time that Base finally gets something to work in his favor, Av3k is there to just send him right back down. Just look at this. Base had a good engagement for once, but then Av3k retaliates so powerfully that Base is forced to burn, what, 20 seconds just sitting around, restacking with small health bubbles, waiting for the mega to spawn before he can do anything at all. And now we're already that much closer to the end of this series, and Av3k knows that he can keep doing that just through smart positioning alone.
I think you're right though. Av3k just way too strong. Again, using those positional angles from top rockets. The orb just to make matters worse now for Base. He's trying to push in as fast as possible, see if he can clean up with the shotgun. Not going to happen. Av3k had too big of a stack, and he's going to be going straight down the hole. See you later, Base. 10 frag lead for Av3k, and I must say, it's been a stellar performance from Av3k here.
That's a lot of damage once again.
Jesus.
Av3k will drop the 20 bomb. We know that the heavy nail gun is one of the weapons with the highest DPS in the entire game. It is also incredibly difficult to land, but when you get up close and personal, there's not that much room to miss, and Av3k shows that off perfectly. Now base landing a few nice vertical rails there, but ultimately it is far too little, far too late, and the Polish Prince is going to get a 2-0 already.
Base left on 8 HP. The trades have just been back and forth here, Flea, and you see now Base just trying to stay alive the best he can. Trying to try and go 3 for 3. He will not be, as Av3k does take him down and make it 21-12. But a great game nonetheless. It's definitely been an absolute slugfest between the two. Base does get the last kill, but it doesn't really matter. The scoreline speaks for itself. 21-13. Make that 22-14 in the end. And there we have it. Great stuff from Av3k. A very, very aggressive approach from him. And Base just couldn't really do anything about it here. And I must say, once again, great defense from Av3k when he was trying to hide around the top rocky area to get that advantageous position with those rails. We see it time again with Chain versus Sib. Chain was doing that quite a lot against him, and Av3k was doing the exact same thing this time round, and Base just struggling.
I actually feel like there was just a moment pretty early on, around 3-4 minutes in, when Base just went extremely aggressive, hyper on the offense, with really there not being much of a reason to. You can see it now on the replay. Base very often off spawn. I don't think all of the frags are going to be included, but there were like 4 frags in a row where Base just spawned and he was like, okay, I've got a shotgun, I've got a nail gun, maybe even just my starting machine gun, and I'm going to push in. I'm going to run across and see if I can get to Mega before you do. And Av3k was just not letting that happen. So I do think that Base just, overextended quite frequently, and that's unfortunate to see given his reputation as a very defensive player.
Yeah, even Av3k was probably scratching his head thinking, this is not what I'm normally used to, especially in scrims or anything else. He knows exactly what Base's style is like. You can see the rails there. Speaks for itself here, Flea. Base was on 29%. Av3k 60% rails. Absolute madness. And especially on Exile as well. Look at the damage count as well. 1,522 more damage in comparison. In terms of item control, 19 to the 18 of Base. Not really a huge amount. Just very, very tiny margin. Just picking at straws here, really. And I must say, Av3k, that was, again, a stellar performance from him going into this third map. And I think what you said was completely correct, though, in terms of how Base was playing at the start. He was just going for trade after trade after trade, but at the same time, I can understand it with the base stack which he starts with, but at the same time, he knew the heavy was coming up, or the mega was coming up, around that 5-6 second mark as he was on spawn. So he was trying to do both. He was trying to maybe contest it, or try and stop him from going for it. So at least that way, if he burns it and loses the engagement, then he can give himself a bit more time to work with in the follow-up engagement straight after that, going for the trade. But it just did not work. What was it at one point? 11-1 or 14-4 at some stage, as Base tried to do everything he could, but Av3k was just making sure he was not going to make any kind of comeback in the sliders. Going into this third and final map in the series is Av3k currently up 2-0.
Now the final series is also the final map of this series, rather, is also going to be Base's final opportunity at securing a map. And of course, I don't really think he's in any sort of danger of being relegated after his incredibly impressive start to the stage, but he has to keep in mind that, well, winning and getting a high finish on the leaderboards is also what determines your seed. So this is still very important for Base, rather, as he tries to get a good finish. Every single map counts, because you never know. And you see it time and time again. Players who get a good seed, they tend to get a very good route throughout the tournament, whereas those who start a little bit lower tend to have to fight far more. So Base still really determined to win this one, no doubts.
Seeding can be very, very important going into the Stage 3 finals. We're going to go into the final map between these two juggernauts in Av3k and Base. Av3k coming up 2-0, but can Base scrape a map? Could do. You know, we've seen a lot of potential from him so far, but we'll find out, as Av3k is going to be looking for that clean sweep, is keeping the high ground at the moment. Just waiting to see what Base's first move is. But this is pretty standard from Molten Falls, especially from these two players.
Good opening rail. Oof, Base struggles to get out of the room. Luckily for him, Av3k doesn't connect with follow-up shots, because that could be a pretty disastrous way to kick off this map. I like how Base is approaching this. Already much slower and more calculated than before. Looking to set up a trap. Now, of course, he has to be careful because Av3k is already setting up those totems around the map. He's got 2 working in his favor to begin with. 1 more and he's basically got a Mega to work with. So Base cannot just sit back and wait for Av3k to come to him.
He's already got the overstack whenever he wants to try and put this down, but he's going to try and go for the Mega first before doing that. But I think now would be a great time after he's picked up those bubbles to lay it down. But still, though, he's actually still saving it in his back pocket. Going to go for the Mega, trying to be as cost effective as possible. Perfectly understandable. But one of the totems have been taken down. And this is where it's going to cause a few problems for Base. In terms of his style, like that defensive style he has, or reactionary style, you could say, he can't play like that as much as he would like to, due to the fact that he needs to keep these totems in check. So he can't really play to his strengths here in terms of style. Av3k now just biding his time. Only been a couple minutes, no frags as of yet. The Mega has just spawned. Heavy's come up in the next 5 seconds, but Av3k though does get that first rail.
Base is just really cautious in order to avoid the same thing that happened on the previous map. Doesn't want to give up the lead and then be forced in a position where he has to chase. But the same thing obviously goes for Av3k. He knows that he's outclassed in terms of movement. If he has to chase down Nyx, who is faster than he is, who's got that wall jump to work with, who has, of course, that ghost walk as an active ability as well, he's going to have a really tough time trying to chase his opponent and catch up. So that is why both of these players are approaching this in a very measured and calculated way.
It's a good strafe from Base, but it just wasn't enough, as Av3k still managed to go 2 for 2 on that rocket area, but he needs to try and back away if he can. Ghostwalk does come into play. Use the totems or just in case. Base though took a while here, Flea. It took a while, but do you know what? It worked in his favor. Good mid-air rocket hits the rail as well, and hits the second as well. That was great stuff from Base. Now 2-0 in this map.
I was convinced that was going to be over the moment that Av3k picked up that small armor. Because if Base had landed that second shot before the armor was picked up, that would have been a 2-shot kill. But Av3k just picked it up and then took another rail to the face and lived. So I really wasn't expecting Base to land another one in that situation, but that's exactly what he did. And now it's 3-0. This is a much better start for the Russian player.
Yeah, that was an unbelievable little scuffle there in that rail rim from Base. This is definitely the momentum shift he needs. On top mid, going to drop down to Rockets. Knows that Av3k is directly underneath him. A little bit too late, sadly. Does misses out on his chance picking up that Mega. Will tank that first rail from Av3k. But still no Base with the height advantage once again. Just trying to listen out for his opponent to see exactly where he's going to be going to. Here's the telly. Realised a bit he's going to go straight through. Great rocket there from Base. Trying to fire a couple more, but Av3k just responding beautifully once again with those rails from that angle as well. Almost pixel perfect as Av3k does pick up that Mega. Has 2 totems up as well. Just making Base's life a misery here. He's trying to get away, which he does. But what I like from Av3k, especially the Galena as well, you know, just keeping up with these hourglasses, because he knows that Base is going to be looking for them consistently across the board. But then again, so is Av3k. So this is a great champion pick for Av3k in many different ways, making sure that Base has to be on the offensive to keep the totals in check, but at the same time, being able to pick up these hourglasses to avoid Base having to have as many ghost walks in his back pocket as he sees fit. But so far though, Av3k got a huge stack to work with. Still got 5 minutes left, only 2 frags behind.
I also really like how Base approached his positioning in those opening minutes. There was a very decisive reasoning behind that. He chose heavy. Why? Because Av3k is playing as Galena. Galena can make her own Mega Health. So if you keep her on the side where the Mega is at, then she really doesn't get that much out of either her ability or the Mega, because she can just generate it on her own. Instead, if you allow Galena to set up over on the heavy side, she basically gets the best of both worlds. So Base very strategic in his decision to set up over towards heavy and ultimately deny Av3k the opportunity to get both armor and health overstacked in his favor. So the Russian came into that with a plan. I also think that Base has noticed the totem by now, probably, but just chooses not to take it down. Stream is actually on Av3k's point of view, but Base was quite literally just looking at a totem for up to 10 seconds and just didn't go for it. Which I think was because he didn't want to give away his position. He wanted to listen out and hear when heavy was picked up.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you don't want to give Av3k any kind of, could say, carvings of where you could be. As Base is going to try and get away. He's getting ready for this next heavy pickup. But where's Av3k going to go here? Looks like he's going to prioritize the heavy as well, due to the fact that he's massively stacked in terms of health. So we'll be able to pick up this heavy, so he's going to be pretty pleased about that. But he needs to keep these totems in check, as at the same time, I can understand where you're coming from, where he doesn't want to destroy these totems due to the fact that he will give away his position, but at the same time, he can't let it get too out of control. Using those rockets to keep him at bay. That was a great second rocket, as Av3k does hit him with that rail, but it's just not going to be enough. Oh, he's going to find the two totems around those hourglass. He's going to try and take Av3k out again if he can, but hasn't really got the weapons to do so. And in terms of that choke point, it's not really going to give him a helping hand either. But still, though, going to be able to pick up that Mega. Base looking very good so far in this third and final map. Still got a couple minutes to play with. We'll see if Av3k can approach him a little bit better than he has done over the last few minutes.
Av3k now has all three totems up at once. He's got the overstack going, but Base, just look at that defensive playstyle, and that is exactly what he's so well known for. He gets a perfect read on Av3k, blocks the doorway, and even though Av3k has got that overstack in terms of health after getting all three totems up at once, Base just says, entry denied, you stay back, perfect rockets, and that's all she wrote. And now we're entering the final 2 minutes, and Av3k has to make up a massive 4 frags, which is going to be incredibly difficult to do against a champion that is so much more mobile and has got an evasive ability.
It's also against a player like Base, where we know what he gets up to. Av3k trying to stay out to the best of his ability. He cannot, though. That rail is going to completely stop his chances, potentially getting back in this matchup as well. Av3k does pick up the heavy, Base picks up the Mega. I haven't really looked at the stats so much here, just having a quick look at the moment. Not been a huge amount of damage across the board, but 2,500 for Base and 1,600 for Av3k here. In terms of rail accuracy, not really too much in it between the two. Beautiful LG there from Base. It's a shame really, because he's feeling it a lot more in comparison as he did in those last couple of maps. He didn't play bad at all those last couple of maps. Just the momentum massively swayed in Av3k's favour, and he's got a little bit out of hand for Base. So we'll be using that Ghost Walk preemptively, just in case. Got a minute left to survive, but let's be real, Base should be okay here.
Indeed, he should be. This is beyond what is possible, especially if you consider the Ghost Walk ability. There's just no way that Av3k can turn this back around. Base can burn so much time by means of his ability alone. And yes, Av3k is still going to get a frag. He's going to pop out a smiley as well. I think it's not showing up in stream because of the position of the webcams, but that was just a little cheeky smile coming out of Av3k. Because Base just caught him hiding the totem like that. And even though he got most of the opening damage, it was still Av3k who secured that one. It looks like GG's are indeed being called. Base secures the final map, but the overall victory went squarely in Av3k's favor, which means what we did get an exact repeat of what we saw last time around. 2-1 victory for Av3k. Well played, team Endpoint.
The Endpoint man, the Polish Punisher, whatever you like to call him, he does manage to take the series 2-1 in his favour. That game was a lot like chess, a lot what we're used to from base as well. I did assume we were going to mention that or see that, considering it is Molten Falls. We know what shenanigans base does get up to on that map in particular. But this is the most aggressive I've seen base, especially in those first 2 maps. I just feel sorry for base that that second map did not go his way. The constant trades he was trying to get and the amount of value he was trying to get from it as well, hoping to burn these items. He barely burned any of those items you saw there. And also at the same time, none of those trades worked out at all. But Av3k just played that so well, forcing this style upon base. But base, we've got to give it to him here. Commiserations for the series loss, but that was a great final map from base. Completely, took a while for him to kind of find his stride, but he only found it on that final map.
Yeah, indeed, that's what I was about to say. Base just really couldn't find his groove, played too aggressively for my liking, especially in map 2. The final map is the one where he was able to play the style that he likes to get at. And look at it, it got him a map win. Now, he wasn't able to pull that off earlier, made some strange decisions, questionable choices here and there. Av3k, a well-deserved victory, but this was not a one-sided game at all. And if we look back at it, this is going to be our first game today that is not a 3-0 clean sweep, as we did finish on a 2-1. But this is not over yet, is it, Lethal?
Absolutely not. We've still got one more series left to come. It's the one we've all been waiting for, and it's going to be the match between Rafa versus Sarnath. The 2 players have been absolute monsters in the Americas region, but someone needs to take that L, but we'll find out in just a few moments. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that one.